Haazinu, 13th of Tishrei, in 1969. This year, like that year, the Rabbi Moshe's anniversary of passing, his Hilula, was on the 13th of Tishrei on Shabbos. So let's begin. Parshas Haazinu is sometimes between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and sometimes after Yom Kippur, like it is this year. Although it was our sages who established when the Torah portions were read, but the Rambam writes that whatever our sages established has the same validity, the same power as a biblical commandment, whether it's a positive commandment or negative commandment. Whatever our sages established has the same strength as what they ordained. And it says in the Torah, you should listen to the Torah that they instruct you. You should not turn away from what they instruct you, right or left. They, meaning the sages, so if the sages establish something, it has a biblical weight because the Torah itself says, listen to that. But the question is like this: how is it possible that the same Torah portion is read sometimes before Yom Kippur and sometimes after Yom Kippur? Well, on Yom Kippur, there is this purity that God gives the Jewish people, as it says in the Torah, that before Hashem you'll be purified. So we're in a lot higher level after Yom Kippur than we were before. So how is it possible that we have the same Torah portion, sometimes before, sometimes after, when we're so different? After Yom Kippur, we're before Hashem, we're purified before Hashem. So how can we read the same Torah portion? The truth is that even before Yom Kippur, the Jewish people are already on a high level because they already had the month of Elul, they had the days of Slichas, they had the Rosh Hashanah, they had the 10 days of Tshuva. They didn't get the 10th, but they had a lot of the 10 days of Tshuva. But despite all that, Yom Kippur adds something incomparably greater than what was before Yom Kippur. It's similar to the advantage that a Baal Tshuva has over a tzaddik. It says that when Mashiach will come, Hashem will cause the tzaddikim to do tshuva. So tzaddikim aren't at the level of Baal Tshuva, and Mashiach will give them that virtue of Baal Tshuva. Baal Tshuva is far higher than a tzaddik. So whatever we've reached before Yom Kippur is sort of like being like a tzaddik. We've been perfect. We were really shining our shoes, right? But Yom Kippur comes, and now we're on the level of a Baal Tshuva, so a returnee to the Eibishter. So we're on a whole new level. So the question is, how is it possible that the same Torah portion is read sometimes before Yom Kippur and sometimes after Yom Kippur? In the middle of Parshas Haazinu, parenthetically, Rashi says that up to this point, Moshe Rabbeinu was rebuking them, and from this point on, Moshe Rabbeinu is comforting them. So we do see in Parshas Haazinu itself two different kinds of energy. But reading Parshas Haazinu, whether before Yom Kippur or after Yom Kippur, how do we do it? We don't read, the comforting part now and the rebuke part before. Rather, we read the entire Torah portion, whether it's before Yom Kippur or after Yom Kippur. We read the rebuke part and we read the comfort part, and we have the same concepts called by the same Torah portion is called by the same name, which means it has the same energy and content as the Maggid and the Alter Rebbe taught that whatever is the name of something is the energy of that thing. So if the name of the Parsha is Haazinu, that means they're the same exact Parsha, whether it's before Yom Kippur or after Yom Kippur. And the question is, how can we read the same Torah portion when the Jewish people are in completely two different states? There's a book of the Torah, one of 24 books of the Torah, Shmuel. Shmuel has two parts, Shmuel Aleph and Shmuel Beis. And Malachim has two parts, and Devarim have two parts. So they have different names that, although they have a similar first name, there's another letter there that's added to differentiate between the first part and the second part. Here we have an entire Torah portion that's read whether it's before Yom Kippur or after Yom Kippur. And the question is, what's going on? We're not the same. So how could the same Torah portion now, after Yom Kippur, when we're a whole different place than we were before Yom Kippur? So the first prefacing the famous idea that even after Yom Kippur, there has to be tshuva. Even after Kippur is over, it ain't over. You still have to do tshuva. It's known the story that one time after Yom Kippur, the Rebbe said, my father-in-law visited his father, Rebbe Rashab, And he asked Rabbi Rashab, what do we do now? What was the question? Since Yom Kippur has passed and everything has become perfect, we've said Hashem is Elokim 7 times, which spiritually means that there's an elevation of the emotional attributes of Atzilus to the level of Atik, and besides the spiritual gain, the spiritual level that we're at, besides that, it comes down in the world in a physical way. And that's why we blow the shofar. And we say next year in Jerusalem. And as the previous Rebbe explains, it's not that we have to wait till next year. Rather, Mashiach comes immediately. And automatically, by next year, we'll be in Yerushalayim. So it's not that we're elevating to the highest levels and it stays somewhere in heaven. Rather, we blow the shofar and we say next year in Jerusalem, emphasizing whatever we're asking for, whatever we're reaching spiritually, should happen in the physical world. Mashiach should come. So everything is really the way it's meant to be. Spiritually, physically, we blow the shofar, we're asking for Mashiach to come right now. It's all there. So the question is, what do we need to do now? So Rashab responded, now it's to start doing teshuvah. It's a higher level of teshuvah. It's like tzaddikim doing teshuvah, but that's it to start doing now. All levels of teshuvah are connected to each other. It says a similar thing about reverence for Hashem. There are different levels of reverence for Hashem. The lowest level of reverence for Hashem is being afraid of punishment. Like it says in Tanya, it talks about how children are afraid of getting hit by their teacher. So that's so in a similar way, a Jew may be keeping Torah mitzvahs because he's afraid he's going to get zapped if he doesn't. And the highest level of reverence for Hashem is where you're ashamed in front of Hashem because you feel Hashem's exaltedness, and therefore you feel you're not the way you're meant to be. So even the lowest level, even when you're within the feeling of I don't want to get zapped, in that feeling, if you would dissect it, you would discover a trace of the highest level of fear. In other words, the neshama's expression in reverence for Hashem, the deepest part of the neshama that is expressed in the highest level of reverence for Hashem, that's also present in the lowest level of reverence for Hashem. So too, even in the tshuva after Yom Kippur, there is something of the tshuva. Oh, thank you very much. So before we go on in the Farbrengen, I just want to explain a little bit why we have to start doing tshuva. Now, what does that even mean? So I will explain on another occasion. It's similar to the idea of asking for forgiveness, specifically in the middle of davening, by Shemona Esrei, after Shemona Esrei. That's when we say the confessionary prayer. You think that when you come to daven, the first thing you do is like let's first address the elephant in the room. I made all these mistakes. Let me ask for forgiveness for these mistakes. And once I've asked for forgiveness for all these mistakes, let me ask you my requests. But instead, we do the whole entire davening till Shemona Esrei, and only then we ask for forgiveness. Why not ask for forgiveness before we start? First, ask for forgiveness. First, get rid of the negative.
So the question is about Shemona Esrei, not how you do and so on.
Right.
Shemona Esrei. It's why are we asking for things before we ask for forgiveness? We're still guilty. How do we ask for things?
No, the question is that the question is that it should be right before Haazinu. It should be before Haazinu. Before we do anything else, we should.
Before Haazinu, it makes sense. Haazinu is first. Thank you so much for everything. Or should we do forgiveness before Haazinu even? And
that siddur that you showed me, the siddur with all explanations of the words.
Right,
it says, Hashem, open my lips.
Right.
How do they translate open my lips? Forgive me for my sins, and then I'll be able to talk to you. So in a similar way, before we get in the conversation, I did this wrong, I did that wrong.
Before Haazinu, before Shemona Esrei.
No, before Haazinu.
But you say, okay, I'm trying to understand the question.
Actually, before we start Haazinu.
Before you even start anything, first
say, let me first get rid of. Let me take out all the bad things in me first. Then I'll start talking to you. Let me first address and ask for forgiveness. And who am I to talk to first? So why do we ask forgiveness later on? Middle Shemona Esrei, after Shemona Esrei, Hashan Maganu. Why is that Hashan Maganu? Should be the first thing you do is Hashan Maganu. And the answer is that you only really sense that there's anything you only can really understand there's any issue when you're face to face with the Eibishter.
Yeah.
Only when you're face to face, you feel the closest to Hashem, then you realize that there's an issue. I don't know if the story is true or not. This is why I heard the story just recently, that a Mendel Futafas, when he came out of the Rebbe's room for the first time, his first audience of the Rebbe, just came out of Russia, and he's in the audience of the Rebbe. He comes out of the audience of the Rebbe, and he sees a yeshiva student, a bacher, who was learning a discourse. And in the discourse, there's a line, cheshbon nefesh. Cheshbon nefesh means an accounting for your soul. So he tells the boy, let me tell you what accounting for your soul really means. So what do you think you're supposed to do on Yom Kippur? To think about every single avera you did, every terrible thing you did in your life, every terrible feeling, terrible thing you did. So what a rotten way to spend such a holy day. So you say like this, what's Yom Kippur? What's a cheshbon nefesh really mean? A cheshbon nefesh, a soul accounting is like this. You think about all the kindness of Hashem. You think throughout Yom Kippur, the Eibish's kindness to you. And then you realize Hashem's kindness at the end of Yom Kippur, what am I doing? That's what the Futbas told this boy. In a similar way, come to Shemona Esrei, and you're face to face with the Eibishter, then you start feeling, okay, this is stuff that shouldn't be here. And then you could say, Hashem left Shemona Esrei for real. So in a similar way, when do we realize that there's issues? When by Yom Kippur, face to face with the Eibishter, doesn't tell you Yom Yom, face to face with the Eibishter, then you realize that there's something has to get solved. And that's how it gets solved. But our closeness to Hashem is what allows us to solve things, but also it makes us realize those things have to get solved in the first place, right? You don't even know there's an issue until you're at that higher connection with Hashem, then you realize this stuff has to get worked on. So that's what Rabbi Shabbos said, now to start doing tshuva. This is the beginning of tshuva. So addressing our question was, why is this Torah portion read before Yom Kippur and after Yom Kippur? If a Jew is supposed to be in a whole different level after Yom Kippur than before Yom Kippur, so how can the same Torah portion address the Jew in two different states completely? And the answer is that in every level of tshuva, there is every other level of tshuva. Even the lowest level of tshuva, there's a trace of the highest level of tshuva. So even in the tshuva before Yom Kippur, there's something to tshuva after Yom Kippur. In simple language, the Rebbe says, when a Jew does tshuva, why is he doing tshuva? Let's say he's doing tshuva because he's afraid of getting punished. So in that experience of doing tshuva because he's afraid of punishment, deep down within him, there's a feeling of returning his neshama to Hashem, to become one with Hashem. He wants to merge with Hashem. He wants to become one with Hashem. In his desire not to get zapped, within that, you'll see that the stuff that's made of is a desire, ruach tasha elokim Hashem, the son of the spirit is merging with the spirit with Hashem who gave it. What does that mean? The idea of, I ever said on another occasion, hey, I was speaking about the shaking of the lulav and esrog. I said the shaking of the lulav and esrog is the idea of unity, right? There's 4 kinds of things you put together representing 4 kinds of Jews. But you don't always see the Jewishness in everybody. How do you see the Jewishness in everybody? Sometimes Rabbi said, shabbatshalom, your Jew has to be shaken. The Jew is shaken, so then that exposes their inner core, their neshama. Rabbi said a Jew should be instead of getting shaken up in order to discover your Jewishness, much better to do this to come close to Hashem without getting shaken up. But sometimes being shook up is how you discover your neshama. So in a similar way, a person's doing tshuva. Why is he doing tshuva?
Sometimes you can shake a neshama because I have a minhag I say good Shabbos to anyone that kind of the ultra looks a year.
Yeah.
Sometimes 2 people stand and I say good Shabbos to one of them and the other one pipes up. But Shabbos like insult. Why didn't you say
me?
Yeah. No good deed goes
the
unpunished.
neshama, no, chas shalom.
I'm joking.
And the neshama comes out and it's like, wait a minute, I'm a year too.
Right. So in this, so a person's doing tshuva because he's shook up, because he's getting zapped, because he's afraid of getting zapped. So Rebbe says, although he's like the child, afraid of getting hit by his teacher, although that's what's going on, that fear is only there to remove the klippa. There's a child here, there's an neshama here that wants to be close to Hashem. His fear of getting zapped is just there to get rid of the negative energy so that he could return to Hashem. So even if the simple reason why he's returning to Hashem is because he's afraid of getting punished, the real reason he's doing tshuva is because his soul is returning to Hashem. You follow? He is saying, like there was another occasion, we discussed a couple of weeks ago about the prayer of Chana. Chana's prayer for a child, she said, I'm pouring out my soul before Hashem. That was whenever a Jew asks God for anything, he pours out his soul to God, he's asking for something. He's asking God for Gashmi, he's asking God for a physical thing. Whenever a Jew pours out his soul, the Rebbe says, it's before God. Whenever a child cries out to his parents, he's crying to his parents. He senses, this is my tati. He's asking for something simple and physical and insignificant and family shouldn't be asking for even. But in his cry, tati, there's a sense, tati. It's not just the car he's wanting or the thing he's asking for. In that cry itself, there is tati. So similar way, although the guy is saying, I better to fix myself up because I don't want to get zapped. That's just his fear serves a purpose to remove the external layer so that now his neshama could talk. But now his neshama is talking. His neshama is talking as a result of removing the interference. The interference was like always thinking about his physical stuff and what's going on with him and what's going to happen to him next. Oh, I better also check off my box with God. So in that desire to check off his box with God, what's happening externally is checking off a box. But once he goes in that direction, his neshama is very present. It's similar to what the Rambam writes about this. The Rambam says that if a Jew is meant to do a certain mitzvah, and the Jew is not going to do the mitzvah, and the only way to get into the mitzvah is by a non-Jew forcing him, not a Jew, but a non-Jew has to force him. He's not scared of Jews. He's only scared of non-Jews. So you have to get the non-Jews. You have to get these guys you have to get people which are hooligans to go take the guy and to force him to the mitzvah. So it says the Rambam, although the guy is being forced to the mitzvah because of this coercion, the truth is he is a Jew. He wants to be a Jew. He wants to all the God's commandments. As the Alter Rebbe said, a Jew does not want and cannot sever his bond with Hashem. This is because of the chokhmah shebenefesh. This is because the part of our soul in which the infinite light of Hashem rests. And because of this, that level could be sleeping, but that's there. And because of this, a Jew does not want and cannot separate himself from Hashem. It's only the Yetzer Hara that's forcing him not to. And by him being forced by the non-Jews to do this mitzvah, what's happening is that the force of the Yetzer Hara, the coercion of the Yetzer Hara to not listen to Hashem is being removed. So then why is he doing the mitzvah? He's doing the mitzvah because he wants to do the mitzvah. So there's a lot of, the Jews are complicated, right? There's a lot of him which is saying, I don't want to do this mitzvah. There's a lot of him. But there's a lot more of him which wants to do the mitzvah. His deeper self wants to do the mitzvah. So when he gets beaten up and he says, okay, I want to do the mitzvah, what part of him is wanting to do the mitzvah? Him. That's his deeper self. That's his real self. The coercion just of the being beaten up to do this mitzvah is just removing the external part of him. So now his neshama can talk. And this is true even regarding the person who says that there are people who say, I am a kal shabakalim. Kal shabakalim is a title given in Tanya for the lowest of the low. Kal shabakalim. I'm a kal shabakalim. The Rebbe says it's not really so common to be a kal shabakalim. That's not an easy title to achieve. It sounds like an easy thing to be, the lowest of the low. But the guy says, I am a title, I deserve this title, I'm a kal shabakalim, and my soul is very hidden. So who says that if I was beaten up, who says that because I was threatened, my neshama would come out? Who says that it wouldn't happen? The Rebbe says the truth is that's the way it is. That's the reality. That's what it says in the holy books. That's the way it is.
Is that?
Huh?
Facts on the ground.
Facts on the ground is that you think that if you would get beaten up, your neshama is not going to come out. It's going to come out.
Can you translate that literally?
Kal shabakalim?
Yeah.
Kal means to be to treat things lightly, to treat things with as if they're not weighty. They're very, things which are really weighty. To treat them as easy of easy.
Total disregard.
Total disregard. Kal shabakalim. People who consider important things to be very nothing, and total disregard. That's the word. So sins both before Yom Kippur and after Yom Kippur, there's the same thing as tshuva. Therefore, it makes sense that we could read the same Torah portion both before Yom Kippur and after Yom Kippur. We're going to add another point about the name of this week's Torah portion. The name is Haazinu. Haazinu means to listen. In the famous Haftorah regarding Amalek, when Shmuel commanded Shaul to destroy the people of Amalek, so Shaul did not destroy everybody. He left the animals, etc., and left the king. And Shmuel rebuked him, And Shaul says, what are you talking about? I have all these animals to bring as a sacrifice to God. So Shmuel famously rebuked him and said, listening is better than bringing a sacrifice. That means like this. Although logically, even using the logic of holiness, holy logic, the logic of King Shaul, things make sense in a different way. That's what Shaul said. And Shaul was a perfect tzaddik. It says in the Torah that Shaul was 1 year old when he became the king. What that means is not he was literally 1 year old, but he was like a 1 year old. He never did averos. So he had a great idea. On the contrary, we should bring to Hashem a sacrifice from the animals of Amalek. What a great idea. We're going to bring the darkness to light. So Shmuel said to him, listening is better than a good sacrifice. So the Rebbe said like this: the whole existence of a Jew needs to be Haazinu, has to be to listen. That means he's just a vessel to hear what Hashem says, nothing more. And when we're in a state of Haazinu, when we're in a state of listening, then we're able to reach tshuva, both before Yom Kippur, after Yom Kippur, as if we're in a state of listening. Here's the Yonatan, here's the Ev. If we're in a state of listening, they're able to reach tshuva. I'll tell you one more line, not in this Farbrengen, that I was listening to right before Yom Kippur. I was mamish crying. It was like in 1988. The Rebbe was speaking 5748. The Rebbe was speaking about the laws of earthenware vessels. The Rebbe said that an earthenware vessel, let's say a tray, which doesn't have any receptacle in it, just a flat tray, so it's not able to become impure. And the rule is, unless something is there to receive, it cannot become impure. So the Rebbe says, even if it actually has something to receive and its receptacle is full, it still will not contract impurity if it's not made to receive. If it could receive, but it's not made to receive, it cannot become impure. So everyone was crying. They said a Jew may have a receptacle to receive. He could receive from God all physical things. He could receive from God all spiritual things. But he's not made to receive. It's not what he's about. What is the Jew about? The Jew is about serving Hashem. The Jew is about his whole existence is Hashem. And some of the same thing we're saying over here, that there are all kinds of ideas we may have. Like Shaul had all this great idea of offering to Hashem these sacrifices. But what did Shmuel say? Better than offering sacrifices to Hashem, listening is better than a good sacrifice. Listening is better than the fat of rams. So the whole, how do you reach tshuva? Tshuva is by reaching a state in yourself that I want to just listen. What does Hashem have to tell him? L'chaim v'racha. Yes.
Right, Shmuel, Aleph and Bet. What was the reason for that?
Those were two different. It's a different book.
I know, but I mean, what? You brought it up and then it dropped.
Oh, I'm just pointing out that there are books in the Torah which are divided into sections, 1 and 2, and Haazinu isn't. Haazinu has different parts of it.
Okay.
It's all one Torah portion, and we're reading the whole thing this week. After we finished this segment of the Farbrengen, the Rebbe started singing Napoleon's March.